This week saw the debut of Batman the Fortress #1. Bottom line up front, I don't particularly recommend the comic book. It does look good, but it's kind of a jumbled mess. It's not really well put together. But I think it will be notorious or noteworthy for what I think may be the worst page in Batman comic book history. It is that bad. Gary Whitta has no feel or understanding about who Batman is, or even if he does, he has completely ignored it and put some really just terrible shit into this comic book. And definitely shame on Ben Abernathy. He is the editor of this book. If you don't know the name Ben Abernathy, he's the Batman Group editor, or he was. He was recently promoted at DC Comics to executive editor. He's one of the most important people at DC Comics when it comes to creative. You expect somebody of Ben Abernathy's stature and the fact that he just got promoted to really understand the characters and protect their integrity. And he certainly has not done that here. Some of you may be asking who's Gary Whitta. Others may know the name. He's most notably a screenwriter. He wrote the screenplay for The Book of Eli, which I think is absolutely phenomenal. He also did Rogue One, a Star Wars story. At least he co-wrote it, which I think is still pretty good. I didn't mind that one at all. He's also written some comic book stuff on the indie scene mostly. He's done some work at DC and Marvel in the past. Nothing too big. He was also a gaming journalist. I believe he worked for PC Gamer. So that might give you a little bit of insight into who Gary Whitta is and what he stands for. But in my opinion, this isn't a good representation of Batman. And I definitely want to hear from you guys. If you're a Batman fan, does this read like Batman? Does this sound like the Dark Knight himself? Or does this sound like someone putting their own voice, or perhaps the voice of Brian Stelter, the fathead guy from CNN that always says really stupid shit? This sounds more like him than Batman. It's absolutely shocking that this thing made it through editorial and into print. Let's look at the first parts I want to talk about. Haven't seen a night like this in a while. Last time it was this bad was with that damn fear gas in the water supply. Only so much I can do. Need to prioritize. Hunt the big fish, protect the little fish. These places all have insurance. Not my job to protect their profit margins. In my father's day, the American dream used to mean something: an honest wage for honest work, food on the table, liberty and justice for all. Obviously, you can see by the artwork itself that there's a riot going on in Gotham, much like we would have seen in America maybe the last 24 months or so. And remember, there were a lot of news people saying, oh, those businesses have insurance, let them burn to the ground. Really odd take, in my opinion, and I imagine the business owners themselves didn't agree with that. We've seen a lot of major businesses have to pull out of certain communities because they don't feel like they're getting the support and stuff like that. Gotham, obviously, is not San Francisco. Gotham is protected by Batman, Bruce Wayne, who has a vow to protect the city from evildoers. If you're going out there and you're looting somebody and you're just stealing property that you didn't pay for, you're breaking the law, and thus, in Gotham, you are a sworn enemy of Batman. Can you imagine Batman saying, you know what? That business has insurance. I don't think I'll protect those people today. It's just the most grotesque take on Batman I've ever seen. And I definitely want to hear from some of the longtime Batman readers. Can you believe that you would ever see this in a DC comic where Batman himself was saying, you know what? I'm not going to protect those people. They don't matter because I'm not here to protect their profit margins. I'm only here to protect people that I deem worthy of my protection. In the line talking about his father's American dream, we've certainly heard that from other characters, but it doesn't sound like something we've ever really heard Batman talk about. And we've got like 80 years of history with Batman in reminiscing about his father and the lessons that he learned from Thomas Wayne. Do you ever remember him talking about the American dream my father knew, for an honest wage, for an honest day's work, and all this stuff? It doesn't sound like the character whatsoever, and this only gets worse. Just wait till I read this next part. This is really, it made me want to throw up in my mouth. This is such a bad take on Batman. It's such a clear use of the character to try and push someone's own kind of despicable views about the things that were happening and people that were really hurt and their livelihoods taken away from them. Just being marginalized and the hurt and the pain that they all went through. It doesn't even matter because they had insurance, right? I'm sure all their businesses got replaced, right? Now it's an illusion, a carrot on a stick, attainable by a few, dangled just out of reach for everyone else. A big TV, a fast car, shiny objects to keep the masses distracted while the world around them burns. You want to blame them for grabbing the carrot when the lights go out? Go ahead. but don't look to me to stop them. That's not why I do this. I've read a lot of Batman comics in my life, and I understand you're all going to say, but Wes, this is Elseworlds. It's just an Elseworlds take. It's not really Batman. It's the Omniverse. Everything matters, right? Isn't that what DC Comics told us? In DC Comics, this is their character. This is Batman, and I understand we will get different flavors of Batman, but you need to have the character right when you write the character for DC Comics. This is an abomination. This is a bastardization of the Batman character and what he stands for and represents. I'm not going to blame people for going out there and committing crimes and stealing stuff and burning things down and destroying the city. It's not their fault that they were hypnotized by large screen TVs and fast cars. They're only trying to achieve the American dream, which of course doesn't exist. It's all been a lie. We've heard it from Captain America. We certainly heard it from Superman when he renounced his U.S. citizenship. It's just like, I get that you don't like America, but why don't you like Batman? Why sacrifice the character of Batman on the altar of social justice and your idea of what makes a better society? Lawlessness, callousness, no compassion for your fellow human being, just going out there and destroying other people's property, going and stealing stuff, destroying things. All of those things fly directly in the face of Batman and what he represents. Batman doesn't go out there willy-nilly and you go, you know what? I've decided that the profit margins for that small business are too high. They shouldn't be making that much money, and thus I shall let them be pillaged during the great blackout that is Batman in the Fortress. How the fuck did this get through DC Comics editorial? How can Ben Abernathy sleep at night? How can Jim Lee, in good conscience, promote somebody like Ben Abernathy knowing that he put this comic book out? It seems like there's only one character that Jim Lee really likes and cares about in the DC Comics universe. You would think that he might do, I don't know, just a little bit of oversight to ensure that Batman wasn't being destroyed in a book as unimportant as Batman in the Fortress. Don't look to me to save the city in its time of need. Don't look to me when the power is out. That's not what I do. I'm not here to protect you. I'm only here to protect the people that I deem necessary. It doesn't matter if criminals are destroying your business. It doesn't matter if they're destroying your home. It doesn't matter if they're stealing everything you ever had. You had fucking insurance, and it's not my job to protect anybody if I don't deem them worthy. What a just god-awful, terrible take on the Batman character, and a real desecration of everything that Batman has stood for from the day that he arrived in DC Comics. This is the most important character in all of comic books. This is the DC Comics cash cow. And to let somebody like Gary Whitta, well, he wrote the Book of Eli. Let's not act like he's the hottest name in screenwriting today, but he wrote Rogue One, a Star Wars story. Wow, he wrote the not bad Star Wars movie that they produced over at Disney. Why Gary Whitta gets a license to destroy an iconic character in DC Comics, I'll never know. Somebody's asleep at the wheel. What the fuck is wrong with Jim Lee? What is wrong with Ben Abernathy? What is wrong with DC Comics? And this isn't the only thing that doesn't work with this. Yes, I say that this is the worst page in Batman Comics history, and I'm going to stand by that. And I know a lot of people have other opinions, but the entire comic book pretty much sucks. There's an interesting premise. Yes, the world, it's not just Gotham, the entire world is blacked out. And Superman is gone. No one knows where he is. Obviously, these things are connected. In the end, he's going to end up in the Fortress of Solitude or whatever. Whatever. Perfectly fine enough premise for a Batman miniseries. But the fucking dialogue in here, he might as well be Brian Michael Bendis writing here. Everything is, there's just too much dialogue on every single conversation. It's clearly not written by a seasoned comic pro, which you would expect Gary Whitta to have at least a working idea of how comic books work. But the dialogue is absolutely, it's way over wordy. It's not very good. And of course, you've got to have random appearances by the Penguin and Joker because it's a Batman story, even though they appear to have nothing to do with the goddamn story. And if you like Derek Robertson Batman art, you'll probably like it. I say don't read the words, and perhaps you will enjoy the comic, but there's just not much going on here. I won't be reading this anymore unless there's another page like this and somebody like sends it to me and says, you might want to talk about this. Otherwise, this book can go fuck itself. I'm not interested in this. I am not here to spend my hard-earned money on really shitty Batman comics. I'm doing enough of that as it is. This isn't the only time I've talked about the worst pages in modern comics history. I already did a top 5 list on this, and shockingly, there was a Tom King Batman page in there. There's some other really bad stuff. I definitely want to hear from you guys. Do you think that this page from Gary Whitta rivals what Tom King did in his Batman series? Definitely check this out. I want to hear from you guys. And, these are some really bad pages, and this belongs with them.